Hi, there's a lot of palette options to choose from when you're starting out as a new artist. Well, stay tuned and I'll help you decide which palettes work best for you. Hi, I'm Linda Paul, an Arizona artist, and today we're talking about palettes. Let's start with watercolor palettes. Very often you'll find these plastic style palettes. They're great for watercolor because watercolor typically dries in between use, and all you have to do is add water to refresh them. On the other hand, sometimes that watercolor starts staining the palette, and you can end up with something that looks a little like this. Try as I cannot get that color out of this. So watercolor is best probably used in a metal palette. And very often you'll find that combined watercolor kits come with something that is suitable for a palette. We're all familiar with the famous picture of the artist standing before the easel with his wooden palette and wearing the beret and the cloak of a traditional painter. There are still those types of palettes available, but wood obviously stains and is very, very difficult to clean. Nowadays, they have a similar version in plastic. Again, a little difficult to keep clean because over time, those colors will stain just like they did with my watercolor palette. So to solve the problem with cleaning those types of palettes, they came up with the paper palette. This is very handy. You just tear off the sheet when you use it and continue on. Very handy, but yet again, this needs to be placed in an airtight container or you have to use your paint up pretty quickly to use this type of palette. In my search for the perfect palette, I got a container. Would work well with putting paper in the bottom of it and using that, but it really has too much air in there, and so the paint doesn't last as well. Again, if you're using acrylic paint, you have to remember to keep that paint moist or it's going to dry right away. Here's a nice little container. This is often used with acrylic paints. Comes with a little flat sponge inside to help keep that paint damp, and then you'll use a paper on top of that sponge. But it's not really airtight, so you can't keep your paints for very long with it unless you cover them up. In this case, I've got some foil, and there's my paint. I always keep foil or saran wrap handy for this purpose. And of course, foil comes in handy for wrapping brushes if you're just stepping away for a few minutes and you don't want to have to clean the paint off of them. So always good to have a little foil or plastic wrap available. So a couple of times I've mentioned paper. What I mean is palette paper. This comes in tablets. You can cut these pages to size to fit whatever palette you're using. I use them full size in my big palette. That looks like this. If you notice, it's not very deep and it seals a lot like a Tupperware container. So this container is airtight. It comes in two sizes, so if you want a smaller one, you can have that. But for my use, I find that I really spread the paint around when I'm doing my mixing. So this is a little bit how it starts out. I like to use the gray paper because the white is just a little too bright and it's a little harder to tell what color you're using. The gray tones that down a little bit, but if you're painting on a white canvas, it's fine to use the white palette paper. I tend to tone my canvas either a gray or a soft brown, just to get a good undertone on the canvas when I'm starting a painting. By the time I'm done, well, actually even not even done, probably about a third of the way through my painting, I'm going to have a mess on this. So I will scrape off the paint and put it on the next page, which I put several pages at a time in my palette, so I can just take the top one off, scrape up the paint that I still have that's usable, and put it on the next sheet. Again, this will seal airtight. If I'm going to be gone a long time, I'm probably going to put a piece of saran wrap over the top, or I might put it in the freezer if I have room. A lot of people do that and it keep the paint literally for months. If you use this type of palette, be careful how you use it. I actually ruined one of them and had to replace it because I didn't think to read the instructions. And it says always seal your corners first. Go to each corner, seal it, and then seal all the way around for that airtight seal. Then I do like what people did with Tupperware. I lift a corner and I burp it to ensure that that's good and sealed. So a lot of people will use that same type of palette, but they'll insert a glass sheet. This is good to use if you're working on an undertone where you can place the palette directly over that and see what your color is going to look like compared to that undertone. Again, you got to clean them, and you would think it'd be pretty easy to use a little solvent, a little razor blade, but if you let them go too long, they're a little difficult to clean. Plus, you've got to be very careful with glass, naturally, because of the dangers. So make sure that you place tape all the way around the edges and just be very, very careful with it, because when it breaks, it's, of course, very sharp and certainly could hurt you. I don't use them anymore. I have them available if I need to. But overall, over time, I've decided that the best option for me is this type of palette for use for any type of paint, whether it be watercolor, acrylics, or oils. So consider that investment if you'd like, or choose any one of the options that I've shown you. I hope that helps. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.